Attention, attention. Pop surgeons Eric and Stacey, please report to operating room 1. Pop surgeons Eric and Stacey, please report to operating room 1. Surgery is about to begin.
And this is Popperation. I'm Stacey.
I am Eric, and it is almost Halloween. Middle of October, and it's where we start talking about scary movies. So I thought we should talk about a movie about ballet.
Which, you know what?
Because that's scary.
That is scary as shit to some people. I will be honest with you. There are people that if you say, let's go to the ballet tonight, their eyes get big and they break out into sweat.
And they start making a whole bunch of excuses. Ballet is scary. I would not have thought that ballet would be a really good setting for a scary-ish kind of movie before I saw Black Swan, but it did its thing and kind of made. I saw Black Swan in the theaters when it came out in 2010, directed by Darren Aronofsky, otherwise known for Pi and Requiem of a Dream and The Wrestler. So he seems to kind of, bounce around moods fairly well.
But he has a style.
He definitely does. And this movie is often kind of compared to The Wrestler because they're both movies about quote unquote athletes whose bodies are their instrument and how they, and in The Wrestler, his body is failing him. He's getting older. In ballet, shit, you're over the hill when you're 35. So,
True that.
It's not... and that's not the only reason that she's insecure and kind of goes a little wacky. But this is a movie about a young ballerina played by Natalie Portman, who won the Best Actress Oscar for this role, is cast in Swan Lake and goes a little nuts. Actually, she's already a little nuts when the movie starts.
I think she would have to be. Okay, are we going to deal with spoilers here?
Yeah, I would say this movie, if you haven't seen it and you don't want any spoilers, go watch it and then come back to us because we're going to spoil the shit out of this one.
So I think that based on the ending, that she's crazy the whole time. She's nuts. Now, having said that, her mother is an enabler.
Yes.
Her mother is Barbara Hershey.
And this is a lot of movies, it would be difficult to do a movie about the inner life of a ballerina and not get into a mother-daughter relationship because most of these women who are prima ballerinas have been at this since they were 8, if not before.
I was going to say that's starting late.
Yeah, but I mean they start having professional aims at about the age of 8. They've been in ballet classes since they were 4.
Somebody has pointed to them and said you could be a star.
Yep.
And so at 8 years old, that's when they start the heavy hitting stuff. And you're not just doing the little recitals. You're going to practice once or twice a day, 6 days a week kind of thing. And you're, watching what you eat, which we see that happening.
Yep.
So it's technically it's a psychological thriller drama thing,
but it was billed a little bit. The folks in my life who really like scary movies saw the preview with her red eyes digging a shard of glass out of her side and thinking, this looks scary.
The trailer looks like a horror movie.
Yeah. It has elements of a horror movie.
Sure, but I think that to me it was really much more thriller than it was a horror movie at all. There's just not enough gore. There's not enough jump scares. This is psychological shit.
Yeah.
And you've got to be paying attention because everything seems to mean something or nothing again. But I'll be honest with you. I don't ever. First of all, let me say this. I watched the trailer and I went, nah, I don't have to watch it. Then, it just didn't appeal to me. And so then for this, I did have to watch it and I don't ever have to watch it again. There are things that I pulled out that I liked, but I did not, meh. Is how I
have to say I liked this a lot more when I saw it in the theater. I saw the flaws were more apparent to me when I watched it the second time. So it kind of reminded me a little bit of the Sleepless in Seattle thing. It's like Halloween's coming. Let's talk about a scary movie. Ooh, I know. Let's talk about Black Swan. That was fun, which is a weird way to describe this movie because no one in it is having fun, but it was fun to see.
Mila Kunis might be having fun.
Mila Kunis is having some fun. But it was kind of it reminded me of it was a thriller. There were some of these ooh ah kind of things, and then these kind of like deep. I mean, when she saw her face, when her reflection in the mirror did something different than what she was doing, and it freaked her out. Those were moments that were like, again, they weren't jump scares, but they were ooh,
No, there was a lot of gaspy kind of stuff,
and a lot of kind of foreboding. This feeling of dread, was all over this movie. But watching it the second time, it was a little bit like, does she have a mental illness? And if so, which one? Like, make up your mind. Like, it was just kind of a...
I agree. I mean, and part of it is I did not see it in the theater. So I was not surrounded by complete black and with this huge screen in my face. And that does change how you see things.
Yes, this is a movie, I will say, was meant to be seen in the theater.
You need to have no distractions whatsoever, I think, to be completely enveloped in it. And I was not... and I've said this before, part of it was I didn't like anybody in it. One, Natalie Portman is a good actor. Okay. Number two, I'm going to give her the benefit of the doubt that she was directed to do what she did in this because I think their point was, so she starts out as this frail, whatever, and then ends up, she starts out as a white queen all the way you could go, naive and whatever, cliche. And then she ends up as the Black Swan, the fun-loving, hedonist, whatever, cliche. But in order to have it black versus white as opposed to shades of gray, you had to have her go all this way. And we meet her and I'm like, oh my God, she had a worried expression on her face the whole goddamn time.
Yeah, she's stressed out and she clearly suffers from huge amounts of anxiety from the beginning. To take a little bit of a step back, she's cast in Swan Lake. Swan Lake routinely casts the same dancer to play both Odette and Odile. Odette is a sweet princess who was the victim of an evil sorcerer, put a spell on her, turned her into a swan. Only on nights with a full moon does she return to human form, and the only way to break the spell is for her to find her true love.
She's the white swan.
She is the swan queen, the white swan. The sorcerer has a daughter who is literally a swan, a black swan. But halfway through the ballet, turns her into a human being who, by the way, is the spitting image of the young princess, so that the prince will marry her thinking it's the girl that he is in love with, when in fact it's somebody else. Then at the last scene of the play, he returns to Swan Lake, sees, his true love, the white swan again. And depending on what the choreographer wants to do, she either kills herself or they kill themselves together because they are truly bonded. And that's what the true love, blah, 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 tragic ending. So it is something that throughout kind of ballet history, this is kind of known as one of the most challenging roles a dancer can ever take on, because you have to embody both the sweet, virtuous Odette, as well as the dark, seductive, sexual, Odile, who is, so this is a setup that is not completely out of nowhere. This is a thing that a lot of dancers do. And she mentions Margot Fonteyn at the very beginning of the movie as a star in the ballet world. She was famous for playing this dual role over and over again. Yeah. Tons and tons of times. So let's talk about the cast of this thing. And these are actually the way that the cast is listed in the closing credits of the movie, is that not everyone, but most of the principals are given kind of two roles. And one of them is the role they play in the movie. And the other is kind of what the...
If they were in the story, Swan story.
Yeah, how they show up in Swan Lake, kind of. So Natalie Portman played Nina / the Swan Queen, which I agree with you. Natalie Portman's a good actor. She can be great at times. In this, I think if she were sane or barely clinging to her sanity at the beginning of the film, you could have latched onto her somehow. And then as she went crazy, you could have felt worse
I
for
needed
her.
to see something. And here's what I'm going to say. So the very beginning, she is she's auditioning for the Swan Queen because the old Swan Queen has been fired. And so you see the stress of her preparing and auditioning. She then auditions, and the guy tells her, "You were good enough for the White Queen, but the White Swan, but I don't think you can do the Black Swan."
Yep.
So that's her stressor, and I'm sitting there watching, and I'm thinking, is she really good enough? And it's not about the technical ability. They got real ballerinas, so there's real good dancing happening, and we'll get to that, but. There was I wanted to see a fire in her that would make this guy say, let me see what you can do. Maybe you can be the Black Swan, because he did give her a chance. So I never saw that. She was always so insecure. She was always so worried and so timid that I'm like, I don't think she would have been given a shot. I think I call bullshit. I think she would be in the chorus the whole damn time. And so that's what I didn't find believable. What that also did is that I'm like, I don't care. I mean, you're a weenie. Why are you my protagonist? Yeah. And that was frustrating to me. So the next character is Mila Kunis as Lily the Black Swan. So, and she kind of was, but she kind of wasn't.
Yeah.
Her character, much more interesting to watch for me.
Yeah.
And much more likable. I wanted to...
She was fun. You wanted to hang out with Lily, even though she might spike your drink.
But it's not my point that I have to like the character. I've got to be able to see something that is going to make me care about what happens to them. And I didn't. And
I think part of it is because she is so scared the whole time. Part of it is that she's already a little nuts. At the beginning, and so it's hard to relate to her.
Yeah, you don't know that. You know that she's insecure and she sleeps in a pink room and her mother is cray.
Yeah, we'll talk about the mom in just a minute.
But you don't know that she is really mentally.
But part of Mila Kunis that's hard to kind of reach as well is you don't know ever really how much of the film you're watching Lily or you're watching Nina hallucinating Lily.
Correct.
Because Nina hallucinates a lot. And so you can't really trust anything you see in this movie because you could learn 2 scenes from now that Nina was making it all up.
But then you don't believe that. I mean, I'll be honest, at the end of the movie, I'm like, I don't know whether this really happened.
Yeah. And that was the intent, I think, because when you saw it in the theater, and again, you had no distractions, that was the big thing that you talked with your friends over a beer after the movie was how much of that really happened.
Yeah.
And you were meant to be disoriented there.
Was she even a ballerina?
That's
how I walked away going, I don't know whether this really happened at all. It all felt like it could have been, what's her face's dream in Dallas when she wakes up and 2 seasons were all a dream. I mean, I sat there and I'm watching her at the end going, is this still a dream of hers? Is this all this performance, all this practice? Her mother, because you see her mother get really, really hurt, and then suddenly her mother's sitting out there. So you're like, well, one of them is, a hallucination. Yep. That was part of my problem. I didn't find it compelling enough to go, it's so, you never know what's right. I feel like an audience needs to have something to hold on to.
And I felt like I had that in the theater only because it was a huge experience. It was happening all around me and I was caught up in it. And then just trying to keep up with all the hallucinations, it was a lot more enjoyable there than when I was watching it at home. And so I would just say that it was a fun movie to watch in the theater. Mm-hmm. It was, the flaws were a lot more apparent watching it in my living room.
That is not the first, nor will it be the last movie that is like that. I'll be honest.
So Vincent Cassel played Thomas, the artistic director. He was great in his performance, but what a pig. He was a terrible person.
Character is awful.
The
character is disgusting. But I do know that sometimes coaches and directors of artistic things and whatnot, and coaches can be hard ass on their big athletes or their big stars. So I kind of got that. But again, going back, what was real? What wasn't real? I don't know. Did he even exist? Did any of these people exist?
I think if you're going to go that far and say you were watching a dream sequence in the very beginning, then the movie had to mean something else, and I didn't know what that was. So I'm going to say that yes, you were watching a girl who was cast in this show, and she was going through some stuff. Beyond that, I think there were moments where clearly they were showing you two realities that couldn't coexist all the time, and so part of it had to be her hallucination. But I think that if you're just going to say all of this stuff was completely made up, then it's just a waste of 2
But that's my
hours.
problem. Is at the end I sat there and went, I don't know. I don't know what was real and what wasn't. Yeah. But I thought Vincent Cassel, whatever, he did a great job.
Yeah. Barbara Hershey was Crazy Mom. Also billed as the queen. And in Swan Lake, the prince's mother is the queen, not the swan's mother. So that's a little off, but the queen is a very domineering character, forces the prince to get married, forces him to make a choice tonight. And so she is that kind of, mother figure. And there is no character in Swan Lake called the Dying Swan, but that's how Winona Ryder was billed. Beth, she was the former prima ballerina, big, huge star of this company, but was being let go. Winona was 39 when this movie was made, so it would have been absolutely correct that if she were a huge star, she might have been able to hold on till the age of 39, but she was going to be let go pretty soon because ballet dancers just don't typically dance into their 40s. They just don't. So at the very beginning, the first time we meet this character is that she has clearly just been fired or told that she's not going to be the Swan Queen. And she's in her dressing room throwing shit everywhere and cussing up a storm. And Nina, our heroine, comes by and is like, here's the ruckus, looks into the door that is conveniently open and sees Beth losing her mind. And then Beth grabs her purse, whatever, storms out. Nina says nothing to her, but Beth looks at her and goes, "What?" And then storms off. I howled with laughter. It was fabulous. I appreciate Winona Ryder, but I loved that moment. And I will tell you right now, at that moment, and I kind of wish that was the last time we saw her, but at the moment I thought that's the last time we're going to see Winona. And I thought, I would have taken that role just for that scene. It was fabulous. And her what to Nina was hysterical. And I thought it was brilliant. After that, her character became whatever it became. But I loved that first moment when you see Nina. I thought Winona owned it like a bitch, man. Yeah. And I will say, you don't see Winona much more than that. She has a couple of scenes. Yeah. If you're going to see this because you love Winona Ryder,
no.
You'll be
not her show. Not her show.
So it's not important, but interesting, I think. I think you benefit if you watch this movie knowing a little bit about Swan Lake before you jump into it. Because there are things that are alluded to, but the more that when I got ready to watch this again in preparation for this, I actually Googled Swan Lake and just read the Wikipedia about it. And I Googled a few YouTube things so I could see ballerinas play both roles and kind of and do that. The plot, as is described in the dialogue of this film, at one point, Natalie Portman's in a bar and this bro asks her, so what are you doing now? And she goes, Swan Lake. Do you know it? Oh, I've heard of it. What's it about? And she says, a girl is turned into a swan and needs love to break the spell, but her prince falls for the wrong girl, so she kills herself. That's the 2-sentence synopsis of Swan Lake. Yeah. And there's more plot than that, but not much more because it's a ballet and they don't talk. So that's basically the thing. And then when he says it's a downer, she goes, it's beautiful, actually. And Swan Lake is it's a classic.
It is a classic.
So much so that it's now kind of a cliche. We talked last month about Funny Girl. There's a Swan Lake parody in Funny Girl.
Yes.
What you gonna do? Shoot the schwans? These girls, my lovelies. That's kind of so. There's a moment there. The wrong girl is actually the sorcerer's evil daughter, who is again turned into human form to look exactly like the Swan Princess, which is why ballet companies really do routinely double cast these roles. And interestingly, though, Tchaikovsky did not write this to say, I mean, he just wrote the music, right? He knew the story that he was trying to tell, but the whole idea of a black swan was not the original part of the show. Odile used to be very colorful. You know, Odette was always in almost all white. She was supposed to be a swan. You know, Odile was never seen in swan form. You know, she was always seen in human form and shows up to the court originally in this very colorful kind of outfit. Only recently have we gone to this, you know, black, white kind of a thing,
Right.
which kind of speaks to our whole, if you want to get into feminist theory, right, this whole virgin whore binary that a lot of women feel like they're trapped in. Like if you are at all sexual, you're no longer a virgin, now you're a slut.
Madonna whore.
You know, it's the Madonna whore complex. And so the ballet kind of feeds that a little bit, and you can almost see that throughout the entire thing. You know, there's a moment where, you know, Vincent Cassel as the horrible artistic director Thomas, who wants to know whether or not Nina's a virgin, like that should matter. And yet the movie seems to almost take his side, as if to say, you're not capable of dancing both of these roles unless you have a little bit of both in you, because one character is the virgin and the other character is this dark, seductive
it's the
force.
idea of the coach or the director of the company, you know, trying to get a performance out of the artist or the athlete. And so they use psychological bullshit. And I've never been a fan of that. I think that's crap. I remember hearing about Rebecca, the filming of Rebecca with Alfred Hitchcock. And he, Laurence Olivier wasn't really happy that Joan Fontaine was cast in that role.
Well, he wanted Vivian.
Correct. Speaking of crazy. But so he didn't really like her, but Alfred Hitchcock encouraged him to be a shit to her. So Joan Fontaine, the fear you see on her face most of that movie is real, because she didn't know what Laurence Olivier was going to say or do because he was being such an ass. I think that's bullshit. I think that, you know, Alfred's role would have been more of a protector in that. And I think the director should be protecting the actors from that kind of bullshit. So having that in the background, I think that that's what this was going on here, was this Alfred Hitchcock kind of bullshit. But yeah, it's putting it into, you know, it's black or white. There's no fucking gray swan. And that was, it was just weird. I was very uncomfortable during those scenes. It was #MeToo, but
Yeah.
it was also screw that. It was just, oh my God, you know what? This was 2010.
Yep.
I would have, to me, it jumped out as being really?
Well, I think it was absolutely meant to be abusive. I think you were supposed to look at this and say, he's abusing her. And he was. I think in the time before #MeToo was a movement, you know, I mean, but it's certainly way post Anita Hill. I mean, she was
Correct.
being sexually harassed at work.
Yes, she
We knew what
was.
sexual harassment was, and this was meant to be a portrait of that. But that's why I say it's a little disturbing at some level, because the movie almost seems to take his side, that the more she explores herself, mostly sexually, the better she is.
Oh yeah, it was all sexuality.
You know, yeah. So that the idea that, you know, that are you a virgin became a question that maybe should have been asked. No, you should never. That's stupid. That's bullshit. But the movie seems to take his side almost, that was a decent way to try to draw her out and get a better performance.
Well, we
out
sit
of
there
her.
and we go, well, that's artistic. I get that. You're like, no.
It's bullshit.
But as I said, yes, I think because as the movie goes on, that does seem to drive her to being a better black swan.
And yet I do believe there is this thing that I thought was real, is that when he kept on saying, let yourself go, just let yourself go. She's so obsessed with being perfect that she, you know, the way that she raises her arm, the way that she places her fingers, she's thinking about everything. And as a former performer, I think you've probably, you know, we've both worked alongside actors who are too much in their head. And they're trying to make sure everything's perfect, when at some point you just have to trust yourself and just lose yourself in the moment. And that's when real great things happen. And I imagine that's probably true for ballet as well. You've been practicing at the bar since you were 8 years old. Trust that it's going to look good when you do your plie, and just think about what the character's going through, not about whether or not your arm looks
right.
good.
And he could have said, don't overthink it. That would have helped too, as far as instead of, are you a virgin? But here's the thing. Also, I will say on to that point, because the trying to attain perfection in the arts is actually, it's not counterintuitive, but it's not the right way to go.
No.
Because in order to really be real and for people to really connect with you, there has to be that idea of it's real, and thus there is an imperfection about it. And so for people who try to be perfect in acting, which is where my experience is, you're going to, no offense, you're going to fail. You're not going to get to that next level. You're going to plateau at some point because you're not going to be believed. And I think that was what he was saying, is that go, let yourself go. Again, he could have said, why don't overthink it. Let yourself go into it and enjoy the moment, be the character, and let that take you where you go, because she had it.
Yeah. And that is one of the things that I will say did make this movie interesting to me, is that A, he was a shit, B, he had some good advice. And those two things were true at the same time.
And it went back and forth
because
during the
an audience member is not going to care whether or not her plie was perfectly executed. They're going to care if they believe this story that she's in love with this man, or if they believe that she's a dark, seductive force who is out to get him. So that actually is true. And then, hey, maybe you should go home and masturbate is not great direction.
Yeah.
And, at all.
No. Okay, so we're back talking about Black Swan because it is October and it's scary movie season. And this movie was probably, I'm going to backtrack. I said it's not a horror movie because there wasn't enough blood and gore. I may be wrong. Do you remember her toenails?
Yes, and she would picking at her fingernail. Jeez. And then peeled back a whole huge layer of skin.
Sweet mother of God.
Lots of blood.
It was disgusting, but not the kind of, Freddy or any of that. It
not
was
a hatchet job kind of a thing.
Nasty.
And yet she did pull a shard of glass out of her body at one point,
Sure.
and and there was a little bit of self-abuse going on there, literal and figuratively, throughout. So yeah, all I kept thinking about was that song from the chorus line, "Everything is beautiful at the ballet." And I was like, boy, everything is not beautiful at the ballet. First of all, just the amount, what I did like about this movie is it did show you how hard these folks work. She's covered in sweat a lot. And you see her at the end of a 12-hour rehearsal day where she's still working and working and working and perfecting and perfecting and perfecting. And the way that you see the damage that's done to her feet, especially at the end of the day, her feet are just wrecked, and then she's. And
that's long. That is a reputation of ballet women ballerinas is because of the toe shoes and whatnot. Your toes and feet are disgusting.
Yeah. And she's constantly got hangnails and, all these little just kind of, imperfection stuff. And then there's this thing where she scratches her back at night. She kind of reaches behind her shoulder blade and scratches. And then you start to wonder, is she really scratching, or is those black swan wings trying to get out? Because eventually she hallucinates. We can only imagine black feathers start to sport out of, but her mom does say you were scratching all night, which is why she puts wool socks over her hands.
And then her mother, there was a scene where her mom actually cuts her fingernails.
Yes.
Here's what I want to say. It was 2010. You can get some damn clippers. Why are you using those old school scissors?
Because they're scarier.
They are scarier, but I didn't believe you because I'm going, what the fuck with that? Come on, it's not 1910. I was ticked off with that. That bothered me. And of course, she's doing the scissors, which are way more dangerous, and cuts her. And so you had your jump scares.
And she's doing it frantically, and you're just waiting. I mean, the whole time, like I noticed that my hands were in a ball. I was protecting my own fingernails while I was watching that scene because that's why, because they're scarier. because they're sharp and they're blades, and it's why you still see straight razors sometimes in the movies where men don't use straight razors anymore.
I know,
but when an actual blade gets close to your neck, it's scary. It's the thing.
Yeah, but this I don't know. That just bothered me. I just felt like I was being manipulated. That's where I felt like it was trying to manipulate me.
Well, of course it was trying to manipulate. Hashtag not a documentary, but it was doing it in a clumsy way that like showed its face.
That's my problem.
Yeah.
I get that every movie is manipulating me into believing something that's going on the screen. What I'm saying to you, it was done very, very clumsily. Yeah. Do it better.
So I read some of the stuff in this movie that indicated that Nina was perhaps bulimic. I didn't really pick that up. She tried to throw up a lot, but I just thought it's because she was so insecure and neurotic.
I didn't feel like at first I thought when I saw what her mother put down for breakfast, I'm like, oh, okay. And then
a grapefruit. Half a grapefruit
and an egg or something. There was a protein there. And then, she had several times where she was throwing up. I felt it was usually the timing was such, it was nerves.
Yeah. All the time I saw her throw up, I always thought she's doing it because she's
if I had seen her throw up when there was not a nervous thing, then I would have said, oh, we've got bulimia happening. Yeah. I did not feel that was what was going on at all. That was one problem she didn't have.
And I don't think she was anorexic either.
No, I didn't see that.
She does refuse a huge piece of cake, but if you're a ballerina and all your whole, of course you're not going to eat a huge fucking piece of cake.
No.
It's not like she said a small piece
and her mother went insane. I'm like, well, she has to eat a big piece. Yeah. I mean, for me, that was the mom's problem.
And that was also mom infantilizing her daughter.
Correct.
Yeah.
But I did not, I get that, but I did not see the eating disorder part of it. It was just she gets nervous or stressed and she threw up.
Yeah. So another thing that I kind of thought would be interesting watching this movie was kind of hashtag me too much. A little bit in this, just all of we've talked about it already a little bit, but the artistic director, Thomas, is constantly forcing himself upon her. The reason that he thinks, or at least the reason he gives, that he thinks that she might have it in her to play the Black Swan is that when he tries to force himself upon her the first time, he kisses her and she responds by biting him.
Yeah.
And that was like, ooh.
Yeah, that's what got her the part.
Spitfire. She's kind of spunky, which is also just another way of, misogynistic bullshit.
It's gross. She stood up for herself, sort of. Was it me too?
But then she apologizes. Oh, I'm sorry. Like that was just totally played off as an involuntary response.
I could not have any sympathy for this girl because I didn't know what was reality and what wasn't. And B, I did not see that fire biting him on his lip. To me, he's like, oh, now you've got. She didn't have the part. Then she bit him on his lip, and she does have the part. And to me, that was, you talk about a plot contrivance.
Yeah.
That did it. But also for me, that still didn't give me, oh, she's got strength in her. I didn't believe that.
No, that was an automatic fight or flight response, completely fear-based. Because right before that, he was saying, you have to surprise me. You have to surprise me. And I was like, if that had been Mila Kunis who bit him on the lip, she would have looked at him and said, you surprised? And she would have walked out. She would have used it to
him in the
benefit,
groin, or she would have hit him in the face. Yeah. I mean, it wouldn't have been something timid like biting you where your mouth already is. Yeah. You know what I mean?
But that's what gets her the job. The notion that the two of them are having an affair is taken for granted by everyone. Winona Ryder accuses her of sleeping with Thomas to get the part. In one of her, few kind of moments, Natalie Portman answers, not all of us have to,
And which I thought was a great line, but I'll be honest, at that moment I went, well, that was out of character.
Yeah, because
I didn't believe it. I mean, it was like, that's a great line. And I wish I saw a little bit of that fire. I wanted to see a little bit of that earlier with her mom, with Cassell. I needed to see that in order to believe it by the time it actually happened.
Although I will give Natalie Portman props. Her line reading in that moment was not so much fiery, and not bitchy. She was just insulted that anyone would think that she'd have to sleep with somebody to get a role because she's so committed to being
she said the line in character, but the line was out of character.
Was out of character, yeah. But Lily does the same thing. It's like, they go out for drinks and Lily, Mila Kunis's character, is like, so how is he? And just like, what are you talking about? That's not even, oh, come on, you can tell me. And not even judging her for it. Just, obviously.
Did they go out?
I think they did. Yes, they did.
Did Lily come home with her?
No.
Okay.
No. So the way that I track it, if you take the movie for what it is, when Nina, so there's this scene, if you don't know what we're talking about, here's what we're talking about. Lily comes over to Nina's apartment and to apologize for something, and says, we should go out, come to a bar. Nina has just had a huge fight with her mother. And so that little bit of impetus says, I'm going out with my friend Lily. The two of them go out to a bar.
Let me pause you. Let me just say, that is an example of every time she does anything that has fire or spark to it, it's because she was provoked.
Yeah.
She never does it on her own. And maybe that's part of my problem with her.
Yeah,
and that it has always been provoked into having some sort of a spine.
She's very much a victim.
Yeah.
Always. She is the portrait of victim, which is why there was a review done by a woman named Sarah Manville.
I read that.
Where basically she says this movie is entirely misogynist because of that, because Natalie Portman is just victimized throughout. That's just like, it's a misogynist wet dream to watch this 2-hour movie where she's just victim. Anyway, she goes out. Lily, Mila Kunis, tries to get her to take this pill, ecstasy, I guess.
Yeah.
And she doesn't want to do it. So she's like, fine. Later, she catches her spiking her drink with it. But then before she takes a drink, she looks at it and says it only lasts a couple hours, right? So knows that her drink has been spiked before she even takes a sip. And then, according to the movie, they go home together and they have sex, although Lily's face turns into Natalie Portman's face towards the end. And you're like, what? Mm-hmm. The next morning, Nina goes to Lily and said, you just left this morning. And she goes, what do you mean left this morning? And she goes, well, you stayed over. And it's like, no, not unless your name was Tom and he had a dick. So I think that what happened was, that moment is supposed to be, the confirmation of this much happened, but this much didn't.
Okay.
So they did go out. They did meet those two guys. Lily went home with one of the guys. Somehow Nina ended up at home. I did notice watching it the second time, the whole scene where she comes home and has a confrontation with her mother, the mother never even looks at Lily or acknowledges that she's even there. So I think that probably happened too. Just Lily wasn't there.
Right.
And she probably did, she had a moment to herself when she was believing and ended up, fantasizing that it was herself anyway. So that whole lesbian sex scene was just a big, but that's another thing about this film is how much of it is taking place in Nina's head. Yeah.
That's what as I said, I found it difficult to keep up. There were times when I'm like, okay, that's in, that's out. And I agree with you. I was like, okay. But after that scene, when she's looking and her bedroom is a wreck. So it looks like there were two people in that bedroom. But then when Mila says, no, it wasn't me. I wasn't there. I'm like, oh, okay. But then again, it's one of those where then I get to where I'm not sure that she's really having conversations with these people.
Yeah, you can never, and I think the movie wants you to feel that sense of disorientation as though you're going crazy yourself. Can you trust anything that you see? And that's one of the things that people I think liked about it when it first came out, is that it was watching this movie, especially in a theater where it's darker, it's that whole disorienting experience of being crazy yourself. You kind of feel it while you're watching.
And that is horrifying. So I suppose it is, gives you that.
But, how much of her night out with Lily was real is a question. She sees scary visions herself from the very beginning, even before she gets the role. At one point, she's walking home from rehearsal and she sees a woman approaching her, and it's a doppelganger in a weird kind of way. She sees herself and has a momentary freak out.
And she does that several times where she sees herself outside of herself.
Yeah. And then during the performance, a whole row of ballerinas is crossing her to get on stage, and they're all her, and so she's starting to multiply. But is she schizophrenic? If you know anything about schizophrenia, there's really nothing else that says that throughout the whole thing. So that was another part of me. Is like, what is if you have a mental illness, which one is it? And spoiler, she apparently dies at the end of the movie. Now, I don't believe for a second that she's really dead at the end of the movie. I think that is completely only because if we are to believe that she dies at the end of the movie, she dies from a wound that she got during intermission and danced 2 full acts of a very challenging ballet while bleeding out.
Yes.
And nobody noticed. Okay, that didn't happen. So I don't think that she, I think that at the end of the movie, the director probably did rush over and said, "Oh my God, you were fabulous." And she goes, "It was perfect." I think she probably fainted, and everyone's like, "Get some help, get some help."
And is it symbolic that she killed the White Swan? She killed that person that she was, and now she's somebody else.
Although she was able to embody both. She gave a perfect performance as the Black Swan, so perfect that she sprouted wings on stage. So of course that's not happening. This is all, but the point is that she's feeling the character for the first time. She's letting the character take her over.
Well, she sucked the first act.
Yes.
And the first act, and she sucked really, really badly. And then she came out as the Black Swan, had a fight, thought she killed somebody.
Yep.
And then came out as a Black Swan, kicked ass.
Yep.
Then yeah, you're right. She had to change. She changed costumes after she.
And You're to Believe gave another brilliant last performance as the White Swan again, and then bled out. No, this is so I think she probably fainted. I mean, again, if you're taking the movie at face value and saying some of this is happening and some of it is not, but here's this disorienting feeling about, what's going on, but it is an open question. And when I went to go see this with friends back in 2010, that we all went to dinner after seeing the movie, and this is all we talked about, is how much of it we kind of deconstructed the movie, how much of it was in her head, how much of it was. And again, I have my theories, and they're only theories based on if I got any kind of external validation from anybody else, then maybe something did happen. Otherwise, you have to assume that it's either in her head or, when she killed this person during intermission, but they showed up in between acts 3 and 4 to say, "Oh my God, you did such a great job." Well, obviously they weren't dead and in her closet, so she didn't really kill them.
Right.
She was actually fighting with herself. And so much of her relationship with Lily was, I need to become this person, but this person is living inside me, and how do you get her out? And it's that whole white dark duality, virgin whore, blah, blah, blah bullshit. But anyway, we're going to take another quick break, and then we're going to come back and just talk a little bit about, what is Nina's deal? Who is she? Because that's another central question of this whole thing. And then we'll give our final diagnosis.
So we are talking about probably my favorite movie in forever. Oh, wait, I'm lying.
Your favorite scary movie about ballet ever?
I don't even know if it's that. And it's the only one I've seen. I'll let you take that. We're talking about the Black Swan. So yeah, what is Nina's deal? And that really is the core of this movie. What is her deal?
Yeah.
Is it, the deal is, first of all, how mentally ill is she? And then, but her mom is a nut job as well.
Sure.
And if we go that some of these mom scenes are real, as I told you, I finished the movie going, I don't know what was real. I don't know what wasn't real. She's sleeping in this pink princess bedroom at whatever, 22, 4, whatever she is. And her mom helps her undress. I mean, does it's very, what was the word you used?
Infantilizing.
Infantilizing.
Yeah.
Is that a word?
It is.
Oh, well, it's a good one, and it describes this perfectly. So she's really not allowed to grow up and be an adult. Now, is this because she's a nut job and her mother knows it? Or, it's like, which came first, the chicken or the egg?
Well, there are clues that mom was a ballet dancer.
Yes, she makes a comment.
Was in the chorus, got pregnant. Her career was therefore over.
At, what she said? She said, but you were 28.
Yeah. Yeah.
Her daughter at one point.
At one point. So she probably was never going to be a prima ballerina.
Correct.
She's still in the chorus when she's 28. But basically has blamed the fact that she was never a star more on her daughter than anything to do with herself, and is consumed with this idea that I will make Nina, I will live through her.
She will do what I couldn't do.
Her triumphs will therefore be my triumphs. Correct. And I will get to experience this vicariously through my daughter. Now, my thing about the movie, and on one hand, I appreciate the movie for avoiding this particular cliche, but I think it also could have helped. I see why that cliche is necessary, is some moment where Nina explains to somebody why she wants to dance. Because my big question about her is, does she even want to be a dancer? Or is her mother just forced her into this life.
A perfect opportunity would have been in the scene when she and Mila Kunis go out.
Yeah.
You could have had just this quick little moment, or even have one of those boys say something about, why you want to be about whatever.
Yeah.
That could have given us, and I agree with you. I would like to have seen that begin, as I have iterated and reiterated, that I did not feel, I didn't connect to this person at all.
Yeah.
Because I didn't know motivations, but also, give me some kind of fire. And if you have a passion for something, aside from perfection, if you have a passion for something, then that will give me a link to you.
But that song that I talked about from a chorus line before, Everything's Beautiful at the Ballet, that's exactly what that song is in a chorus line, is these dancers talking about what first sparked in them the need to dance. Is they went to go see a ballet, they saw how beautiful it was, they thought, oh my God, if I could just do that, then my life would be complete. And this is why they're killing themselves trying to just be in the chorus of this Broadway show.
Yeah,
this movie had nothing like that. And it kind of made me wonder, maybe it didn't have anything like that on purpose. Maybe she doesn't want to be a ballet dancer.
But that would have been helpful to know,
She's just an abused child. If
it's just because it's what her mom wants her to do, and she had some technical skill at it, and it's how it's the only thing she knows that she can do. I still would like to have some kind of a link to know that that's what's going on.
But perhaps that's why she's so obsessed with technique, and she's not a very good actor in these roles, because she has no fire. There's nothing about her that wants to be a ballerina.
Right, but that could, if you add that whole thing, let's go that way, that she doesn't have the drive to be or the passion, I should say, to be a dancer, but she's doing it for all these outside reasons. I think that could have raised the stakes on some of the stuff that happened.
Then she could have gone to the bar and just seen a normal girl coming out of her office job and saying, God, I just want to be her. And Lily could have gone, what do you mean? Like, you're a prima ballerina.
Right.
This isn't what you want. And, there could have been a moment where you just kind of go, oh, but we had nothing. Basically, you have nothing to go on. Does she want to be a dancer? Does she not? Is she just...
You know what? I'm sitting here going, I felt like she was fairly maybe two-dimensional. She was not a three-dimensional character. And I don't think it was Natalie's fault. I think it was the script and the director together not giving us enough. That's how I feel, because that's exactly what my problem is. She was two-dimensional or one-dimensional. I couldn't see her as a real life person.
Yeah. But I don't know that also, just to step back, I don't know that Darren Aronofsky was trying to give us a character portrait so much as he was trying to give the audience an experience. This is what it feels like to be fucking crazy. And if that was his goal, I will say, based on my first viewing back in 2010, he succeeded. Because you did feel like you were going a little nuts watching this movie. And if that was his whole thing about, let's just play with the idea of mental illness and put you inside this person, and this is kind of what it feels like, to the point where now I'm pulling black feathers out of my back and I'm killing somebody and dragging a body into a closet only to see them in the hallway the next minute going, God, you were great. How disorienting I felt while watching the movie. And I didn't have the benefit of pausing and getting my coffee or taking the dog out for a walk, or... You're in a dark theater, you're surrounded by, and people who would occasionally gasp and scream when weird things would happen. And I tell you what, that moment where she's in a room where there's mirrors both in front of and behind her, and you saw those endless, reflections of herself, and one of them turned around and gave her a menacing look. That was kind of freaky. Like, there were, so there is some good filmmaking going on.
Oh, no,
here.
I didn't say anything. We haven't gotten to that. I will touch on the fact that, well, I'll get onto that later. Yes, there was some good filmmaking for sure. That is, I don't argue that. I just have a little bit, I had a problem with the Nina character specifically.
Yeah.
And that colored the whole thing for me.
And I think that there's something, and all I'm saying about that is that I think there's something that you and I tend to go to the movies for, and maybe this was just a different kind of movie. I think Darren Aronofsky just had a different goal in mind when he made this one, and it wasn't about a portrait of a young dancer and whether or not she will succeed. that's the setup. And so we tend to kind of go, okay, well, then I have some questions. And those questions never get answered.
Well, I don't mind it being about a young dancer, whether she'll succeed or not, but also, is she crazy? I don't mind adding that crazy element to it. God damn it, make her more than one-dimensional. I didn't believe she was real. I believed Winona was real. I believed Mila Kunis was real.
I've known that girl. Mila Kunis's character, I know that, you know, whether it's an actor but specifically in the dance world, especially dance like ballet that requires that much discipline, people who do go out at night and smoke and drink and take ecstasy, and then they show up and damn it, they're there at 6 a.m. the next morning working their ass off, but laughing and treating it all like it's no big deal. But inside there's this huge fire. I totally know who that girl is. In a couple scenes, I got that, but I've never met a Nina. And
because she is a picture.
Yeah.
She is a photograph. She's not even, it was very frustrating. And that is a frustration I have. Having said that, I think that was, and I get whatever his point was, for me, that was a mistake, or that was a flaw, whatever you want to call it. I had a misstep. I will say the filming of the dance numbers was beautiful and astounding. I believed for a fact that both Mila and Natalie were prima ballerinas. You could not tell me that was not them dancing every single goddamn time, that I wasn't watching them on point.
The body double work was amazing, because you never could tell. It was never super obvious. I did read one blog by a ballet dancer who took great exception to the fact that Mila Kunis's hair is down and flitting all about her face during rehearsal, because apparently that never happened.
No, that never happened.
But that was done to make a point, because she was the free and easy one. And
Correct.
That was the moment when Vincent Cassel was saying, you need to be more like her. She lets herself go.
Yes.
You know, so whatever.
But no, I agree 100%. That took me out, because I'm like, why is her hair down for this? But then I went away, because again, you know, I think that there was some beautiful cinematography and filmmaking going on in certain aspects of it. And the dance numbers, I give it 100%. They were beautiful. Beautiful.
Yeah. So final diagnosis on Black Swan. Go.
I'm done. I've seen it, and I don't need to anymore. It's a thriller. Okay. For me, honestly, if you say, well, how would you categorize it? Big question mark. It's a big question mark. And if that's what he was going for, well done. If not, whatever. But I have seen it. I don't ever need to see it again. And, but it was worth it, if only for that first scene with Winona Ryder. What? Oh my God, it was
That's
wonderful.
What you take away. My final diagnosis is, you know, again, when I saw it the first time, I loved it. That's why I put it on this year's schedule. Oh my gosh, talk about Black Swan. When I saw it again in my living room with a cup of coffee, it was not the same experience for me. Maybe I'm 8 years older, and that was part of it. But I also think just the experience of being in the theater. I would say that this Halloween, if you're interested in getting a whole bunch of your friends together to watch a scary movie, and you don't want your typical Freddy Krueger, Michael Myers, you want to do something a little different. This is certainly different, because you get to see some, as you say, beautifully choreographed ballet sequences. By the way, choreographed by Natalie's future husband, who also played the prince in this movie.
Oh, really? Okay.
That was the one thing I will say when I was watching this movie. I'm like, okay, we're watching a movie about ballet, and we've not met a single gay man. I don't believe this for a second. Because that's ridiculous. But anyway, you know, and it is scary in a sense, but I would say turn all the lights off, you know, watch it on a big screen, get some people around you. It will freak you out a little bit. It is a disorienting movie, and it has,
or it'll piss you off.
Or it'll piss you off, you know. But it is it's interesting that way, and there's some good filmmaking there. And it's funny, I think I came to this just through our conversation today. Wasn't thinking about this before, but I do think that Darren Aronofsky was making a fundamentally different movie than the one that you and I were looking for, in that it wasn't a picture of an ambitious young performer. He didn't give a shit about her psychology or her motivations or what makes her tick. He just wanted an audience to feel like they were going crazy for 2 hours. And when you're immersed in it, I think he kind of succeeded there. So he
Well-
made the movie he wanted. Good for him.
Yep.
It's an interesting choice for a Halloween movie. I would say it's not perfect. I don't think I think I liked it a little bit more than you did, because I do see some stylistic stuff there that's interesting. And anyway, happy Halloween, everyone. We're coming back to you next week for actual Halloween week with something that in its own way is even scarier. But we'll just leave you with that little teaser.
That's it.
See you then. I'm Eric.
I'm Stacey.
Popperation.
You've been listening to Popperation with Eric and Stacey, the podcast that dissects popular culture one bloody organ at a time. Subscribe today on iTunes, Google Play, Stitcher, YouTube, and any other podcast listening site or app. Follow us on Twitter and Facebook at Popperation Room. Check out our website at popperationroom.com for all of the podcasts, our blog, swag, and games. Until next time, when we're back in the scrubs.
I'm done. I've seen it, and I don't need to anymore.